Hello everybody, and welcome to my latest political ideas video. Today we're looking at nationalism and society. So again, this is part of a great big long series, so there's a whole series of these videos on liberalism, conservatism and socialism, and this is part of the group that are on nationalism, which is our non-core ideology. Right. So when it comes to nationalism and society, we've got a couple of kind of key elements of it. One of the first bits is this idea of cultural nationalism. Now this suggests a society that is based around the language, the culture, the history and the tradition of a particular nation. And it leads to a kind of sense of collective identity, and often you'll have particular parts of tradition or language or sport or something which is senses of a particular national pride, and this seems to be displayed particularly around major national events or sporting occasions. Now one of the most commonly cited examples of cultural nationalism is the Welsh people and the Welsh nation. And again, you'll see a lot of this exposed to, for example, love of rugby and an attempt to preserve the language, which has taken great strides over recent years. So this is often the case. We have a distinctive culture that is seen as being under threat and needs protecting. There's a more dominant culture in society around it. So, for example, you've got Wales inside the UK, you've got Brittany inside France, and so the Welsh inside the UK and the Bretons inside France tend to make a lot of their distinctive culture and to hold on to that form of national society, national identity, and that kind of feeds into a really key part of their society. Now, cultural nationalism can be really, really extreme, and this is kind of the real negative side of it, because it does lead to chauvinism, which is the belief that your nation is superior to others, and you can start sometimes when we get to things like sporting occasions, start see some of this spilling over. But where it really spills over is chauvinism leads to militarism and expansionism. So, for example, we had Serbian nationalism between the world wars, which saw Serbian nationalists seeing themselves as being superior to surrounding nations and looking to expand their power base and take over other people's territories. When it's combined with ethnic nationalism, this leads to the ideas like those we see in Nazi ideology in Nazi Germany, which include chauvinism as above, but also include racialism. And then we see societies divided into kind of them and us. This is an attitude you often will see with nativists, which is again it's something that comes out of nationalism, and they'll say, well, we've got this national culture and all the rest of it, but it's only for it belongs to this group and not that group who've come in and joined us. So nativists often have kind of anti-immigrant feeling. And they're looking to protect what they see was national identity before other groups came in. So cultural nationalism can be something which is a kind of a celebration of the language and the culture of and the history and other aspects of a society. But it can also be a kind of really regressive, really horrendous form of expression in society, which is turned into kind of them and us, and some are good and some are bad, and we've seen that with chauvinism and racialism and the groups like the Nazis. So there's a big difference from, for example, if we look at moderate forms, we've got Welsh people who are proud of their language and their national flag and other aspects of love of rugby, things like that, and to getting to the stage of where you've got a group in saying this is our national bit and you're not part of it and you must get out. So again, two sides of one coin. Right, a very kind of positive form of society and nationalism is what's referred to as civic nationalism. And this is where political pride in institutions and political ideas is more important than kind of any other claim to national identity. And the best example of civic nationalism is in the USA. Civic nationalism, the political values tend to match those of liberalism about freedom and and democracy and others that aspects have come out of that. And civic nationalism is then kind of built up through education and reinforced by the media, and it's often associated with a form of patriotism. So, and you'll get this in America. You get people of all the different ethnicities and cultural backgrounds who are very, very proudly American, and they're really proud of the American Constitution and the American institutions like the presidency and Congress and the Supreme Court. And so that is the basis of their patriotism and their kind of national identity, rather than something based on a particular language or ethnicity or race. And it can lead to kind of it where we then talk about national identity, which things would then start become based on things like citizens tests, which is kind of quite a big thing in America, obviously used in Britain as well, and it can link with requirements to learn a language for citizenship and things like that. Now, we've seen some of this really in the UK and increasingly in other European countries as well. And in the UK, we've seen a focus on British values in the education setting as an attempt to kind of reinforce civic nationalism. And this is, as we've got an increasingly multicultural Britain, it's kind of a bit like the Americans have do. They're kind of going, well, look, there's this stuff in the centre that kind of unites us all. And again, we can see this maybe in the focus on British history and history teaching through in British schools to kind of build that sense of a kind of a core Britishness and linking it to the institutions and the history of the country. Right. We're going to look at a couple of forms of internationalism, which might seem odd since we're doing nationalism, but these are important in terms of understanding kind of nationalist views on society and maybe some opposing ones, but sometimes they can be complementary as well. And liberal internationalism is one that on the face of it looks like it's against nationalism, but there are some aspects of it which can reinforce it as well. So liberal internationalism talks about a kind of an international community. So there is a community that is beyond the nation. So nationalists tend to say that society is about the nation. Liberal internationalism says no, actually there's beyond the nation. There's wider society in a broader sense than that. So that appears to be at odds with nationalism. But liberal internationalism does promote the idea of independent nation states. It does say they should cooperate, but it supports the idea of the sovereignty and independence of nation states, and maybe not completely against nationalism there. But it does lead to this concept of society being at an international and not a national level, and therefore we've got that clash. It tends to promote the liberal democratic forms of states and says they are desirable, but it goes a bit further than that. It says essentially that all states should conform to it. And so we end up with a kind of an international society, and those states that don't fit with these norms, with these kind of liberal democratic ideals, can be excluded from that community. And therefore, kind of really strongly nationalistic states tend to clash with this form of internationalism, with liberal internationalism. And they state that kind of liberal democratic values should be protected through international cooperation, and then therefore you might see international agreements in international groups getting together and acting against countries that don't hold these views. Probably the best example of all of this is the EU. States, when they apply to join the EU, have to show that they are truly democratic. They have to show that they respect human rights. Now, whether out of this a kind of a European society, a wider European sense of belonging has emerged is probably debatable. I mean, obviously, it's something that's been rejected as an idea and has been seen as a fear of what was coming in Britain. But whether people feel European rather than just a member of their particular nation is an interesting concept. And liberal internationalism would suggest that, for example, the people of Germany and France and Spain and Italy and various other members of the EU states eventually are going to become more European and less focused on their particular nation state, though those nation states would continue to exist. Right. Now we've got socialist internationalism, and this really does attack nationalism. So socialism, in particular, if we look at the work of the key thinkers, Karl Marx and Engels, they focus very much on class, and they see all other kind of social divisions merely reflections of capitalist oppression. So nationalism is seen as in this category. So nationalism is like an illusion that is aimed at distracting the working class from class consciousness. And if we say when Marx is writing in the 19th century, we see parties like the Conservative Party in Britain almost like purposely using this one nation conservatism that kind of really pushes the idea of nationalism and empire in a way of trying to unite the nation. And Marxists say, well, this is all just part of a trick, and that really workers from different nations have more in common with each other than they do with the capitalists from their own country, and that workers should unite from across national borders against the capitalist oppression, and that's what they should be looking to react against. So Socialist Internationalists rejects nationalism all out of hand, reject it completely. And socialism generally is an international ideology, and in general it rejects nationalism. And there are counterexamples to this, where socialism is particularly focused in creating a socialist state within that one nation. And then nationalism can be entwined with socialism in a way, because defense of the socialist state is defense of that nation, and we see that combination, for example, in Russia under Stalin. Again, thank you very much for watching. So that is Nationalism and Society, and as you can see, there's some quite interesting aspects to it, and there are, whilst there are some things we can see as quite positive, there are also the potentials of connections with some very horrendous ideas and ideology, and also this idea of nations as societies, which is the absolute focus of nationalism, which says that is the society is the nation. There are internationalists who kind of go, well, no, actually society is bigger than the nation, it goes beyond that. So some interesting ideas. I hope you've enjoyed it. There'll be more. There are more videos on nationalism there already, and more coming. So please please make sure you have subscribed if you haven't done so already, and please comment, and I'll get back to you. Thank you very much.